All right, book community, readers, writers, we all have to have a conversation about novellas. Hey, welcome to my channel. I am a multi-genre independent author with two pen names. One, Margot Primrose for all things romantic and swoon-worthy, and two, T.R. Sloth for all things bloody, gory, and depressing. As both a writer and a reader, I really enjoy novellas. I am working on writing a whole series of horror novellas that take place in the same universe for my T.R. Sloth pen name. I also read a lot of novellas. Some of them are really great. Some of them I don't think fully understand what a novella is. Now, let's get into the nitty gritty. First of all, let's talk about the difference between a novella and a full length novel. Novellas are defined based on word count, and depending on what source you look at, it might vary a little bit. But the general consensus is that a novella is typically between 17,500 words and 40,000 words, whereas a full-length novel is a bare minimum of 50,000 words, with the max typically being about 100,000 words. Now, this can change based on genre. There's a lot of epic fantasy books that are way, way over 100,000 words. That is expected and accepted within that genre. Now, we also have been seeing a trend recently where a lot of books are just longer. I was reading up on this recently because it's kind of been, it's like a paradox recently, I guess you could call it. Because it used to be books that were around 200 something pages were considered normal. Now we're getting books that are huge and really, really thick and a lot longer than what we typically see. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because recently I read an arc for a book that was roughly 200 pages, and a lot of the reviews were calling it a novella. It's not a novella. I think there's a lot of different things coming into play with why people were calling this specific book a novella. Now, one, I do think it is in part because a lot of books are starting to be longer. Now, I was reading about this and they're starting to see a trend in publishing where it's going back the other way, because it used to be a lot of the books were 400 something pages and that was considered the norm, but now we're starting to shift a little bit back more towards the 200 page books. Now, I'm not here to say that just because a book is long means it's bad or good. I'm not getting into that argument because I think that's really subjective, and I do think it can depend on the genre and what the content is within those 400 pages or within those 200 pages. The reason I'm bringing it up is because you have readers that have been reading these books that are 400 something pages long. They're used to that. So when they read a book that is 200 pages, their knee-jerk reaction is to say it's a novella, and it's not. And the other part of this is that depending on how you format your book, the page count is going to change dramatically. And I have honestly been thinking this for quite a while. I really wish that publishers would give us the option to say what our average word count is for that novel. Like when I'm putting in my book details on Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Draft to Digital, whatever your publishing platform is, I really wish there was a place that we could put word count, because word count and page count are not always synonymous, because when you're reading on a Kindle, you can format it and make the text bigger or smaller, and the screen size of your Kindle is also going to dramatically impact page count. And again, when you're printing a book, I've picked up books that were really big and thick, and then I open it up and it looks like it's double spaced. So again, that's going to dramatically impact how long the book is, but word count is going to stay the same no matter how you format it. That's just my 2 cents, and that was a bit of a side rant. Sorry. But I do think if we started putting in word count into publishing, or like average word count, because front matter and back matter can change, I think that would help alleviate some of the confusion about what is a novel and what is a novella. Now, granted, some novellas can be around 40,000 words, which is on the longer side, which is almost a full-length novel, but that still does not make them full-length novels. And just because a novel is around the 50,000 words doesn't make it a novella. So there's some confusion based on length of novellas, and I think if we added word count, that would really help. But honestly, let me show you. I have my own novella. This is how small it is. This is roughly 80 pages. And this is another novella that I have that I like. It's the Murderbot series. These are all novellas. Do you see how small these are? These books, novellas, when they are in print, are typically under 100 pages or just over 100 pages. So I think calling a 200-page book a novella is really a stretch and it's a little odd. If you're working on writing a novella, keep that in mind. Or if you're trying to write a full-length novel and you want to know what the guidelines are, again, keep that in mind, and also know that it can change within genre. Also, if you are looking to go the traditional publishing route and this is your first ever book that you are pitching to agents and or publishers, make it under 100,000 words. A lot of publishers and agents will refuse to publish a first time author's book if it is over 100,000 words. Not all of them, but that is a general rule that I have seen when I was perusing agents and publishers when I was still considering whether or not I wanted to traditionally publish or self-publish. So keep that in mind if you are a reader. So keep that in mind if you are a writer, not a reader. If you're a reader and you're writing reviews, keep in mind page count and word count don't always correlate. I know that. But if the book is around 200 pages, it's not a novella, it is a full-length novel. Now, this next part is more geared towards the writers. Sorry, peeps. But y'all have been messing up. Okay, so just because a novella is 17,000 words or so, depending on how long you make it, it still needs to have story elements. It still needs to have the normal story elements. It still needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you are cutting out the beginning or you're cutting out the end to try to make that word count, you need to rethink your approach. I have read so many novellas that just drove me absolutely nuts because they seem to think that because they're writing a shorter book, they can just cut the whole chunk out of the book and call it a day. There was a novella I was reading. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to like point fingers, but there was a novella I was reading and it had a really great solid start. You saw the inciting incident, you saw everything leading up to the inciting incident, and you saw how the problem started. And then the next page was just exposition of the next several weeks. And then the next page started the climax. That drove me up a wall. You don't do that when you're writing a novella. Novellas should still have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They should still follow a 3-act structure or cat in the bag structure, whatever structure you prefer for formatting your books, it still needs to follow that. Now, it is a novella, so it will be shorter. That means things happen faster. In addition to that, it also means that you cut some of the exposition, you cut some of the, I don't know what you want to call them, like side quests, I guess would be one way to call them, or extra exposition and extra description. I'm not saying don't describe anything in your novella. I'm saying that if you're writing a 150K word epic fantasy, you're going to spend a lot more time talking about the setting and the food and the games and the world building. If you're writing a 17,000 word novella, you're going to just kind of breeze through some of that to get to the meat. You're going to be more meat focused and faster paced. You should still have a full story though. And that is something that I think that a lot of people when they're writing novellas struggle with because they want to keep it short to fit within the novella description, but they cut too much and they cut the important things. You should still always have a middle of your novella. And that is something that I think I've seen the most when I've been reading novellas that weren't quite it. They cut the middle part out, which is really sad and it's frustrating because I think sometimes that the middle part really, really helps make the climax and the resolve that much better. So if you're cutting out that crucial section of your novella, you're going to tick off your readers and you're not going to have a fully formed story. So in short, if you're an author and you're working on a novella, please make sure that your story still has all of the important key elements and structure. You still need good plot, you still need good characters, you still need a theme. You just go faster. You go quite a bit faster. So your pacing should be upped, but all of the elements should still be there. And if you're reading and reviewing, please keep in mind that novellas are not 200-page books. Novellas are typically 70 to 100 pages, depending on format and depending on if it is a longer novella. Hope this is helpful. Sorry for ranting at y'all. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more.